Litter is defined as improperly or illegally disposed waste products, often thrown onto sidewalks, the side of the road, or dumped directly in natural landscapes. Most of it washes into sewers, rivers, and wetlands, eventually ending up in the ocean. Cigarette butts make up 50% of found items, but other worst offenders include food wrappers and containers, plastic bottles, caps, straws, and liquid pollutants. Jeff Kirschner is the founder and CEO of Litterati, a community of environmental heroes who clean and document litter around the world. He explains how this crowdsourced data is used for transformational change, with governments, brands, and consumers working towards a litter-free world.
Hey Jeff, how are you?
I'm good, Kristen. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thank you so much for being here with us. We've been on this great journey to learn about how ocean plastic ends up on other people's shores around the world, affecting them. Also, how people are taking charge and making changes personally in their lives, but also in their communities. And I know that Litterati is a great example about how people can get involved in those things. Can you please tell us more about what it is?
Sure. We are building a community that is crowdsourced cleaning the planet one piece of litter at a time. And through that process, collecting a massive amount of data about what is found all over our streets, our playgrounds, our beaches, and ocean. And the community now reaches 165 countries, and we feel like we're just getting started.
So what was the inspiration for Litterati? How did it get started?
I was walking through the woods with my two kids, and my daughter, who was 4 at the time, noticed this plastic tub of cat litter sitting in a creek. And she looked at me and just said, "Daddy, that doesn't go there." And it was this eye-opening moment for me. And when she said that, it reminded me of when I was a kid. I used to go to summer camp, and the camp director would say, "Quick, everybody go pick up 5 pieces of litter." So you get a couple hundred kids, each picking up a few pieces. And within a few minutes, we had a spotless camp. And I thought, why not apply that crowdsourced model to the entire planet? And that was the inspiration for starting Litterati. What happened next was a little bit weird. I took a photograph of a cigarette butt using Instagram. And I'd love to tell you that there was some big idea at the time. There wasn't. I just took a photograph. But then I took another photo and another photo. And I noticed a couple of things happening to me. The first was litter suddenly became artistic and therefore approachable. And the second thing was that at the end of a week, I had 50 or 60 photos on my phone, and I had thrown out or recycled every single piece I'd photographed. And I realized that the same way people measure the steps they walk or the miles they ride, I was measuring the positive impact I was having on the planet. And what started as nothing more than a hashtag on Instagram has now grown into an application on both iOS and Android, and a global community that have picked up just over 5.5 million pieces, all of which are cataloged, mapped, and collected.
And what are some of the big trends that you're finding in the data that you've collected?
So the way Litterati works is using the mobile app, you photograph a piece of litter. That might be a Starbucks cup or a cigarette butt or a bottle cap. And that photo holds quite a bit of data. We're able to understand who picked up what, where, and when. And we use machine learning or AI to identify what's in the photograph from an object, material, or brand perspective. So as you might imagine, some of the more prominent things that our community is picking up in the data they're collecting: plastic, cigarette butts, bottles, bottle caps, cans, things like that on the object and material side. On the brand side, there's probably also some expected results: Marlboro, Starbucks, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Wrigley's, a lot of the candy companies. But what we are starting to do is look for insights around what are some of the unexpected things that this data can surface. And also, what do you do with that intelligence? So lately, there's been a lot of PPE related material. So a lot of surgical masks, gloves, wipes. In fact, there's a report that came out that waste has increased by 6 times just since the beginning of coronavirus. And we are unfortunately starting to see a lot of that material slip through the cracks and fall into the ground.
That's really disheartening. You know, we can't forget about the long-term vision of climate change, even though there's so many current problems. Do you have any great stories about how starting on this journey personally with understanding yourself has led to further actions?
I guess I'll start with myself because I was never an active environmentalist. Um, but what I've noticed by being part of this community um, and increasing my own level of awareness around my surrounding environment is just how much there is that's out there already.
Mm.
Right? And so when you are coming in close contact with your surroundings, and in the case of Litterati, that means photographing a piece of litter or thousands of pieces, you start to get very aware about, wow, this problem is massive. And then you start hopefully questioning your own actions and how you can stop contributing to that problem. So as an example, we see tons of granola wrappers all over. So I, on not every occasion, but on many, have said, you know what? I don't need to go buy a bulk box of individually wrapped granola bars. I can make granola at home. Now, I'd love to tell you that I do that all the time. I don't. But if I'm only making a few small habitual changes over time, that actually can add up. And that's happened in my purchasing behavior, in my additional or increased usage of reusables. So on a personal note, those are some of the things that have happened to me over the course of this journey. I think much more impactful is what the community has actually been able to do with the data. So I'll give you a couple of examples. In the city of San Francisco, the city wanted to understand what percentage of litter came from cigarette material. And long before Litterati existed, they handed pencils and clipboards to people who walked around, and they collected that data, which led to a 20-cent tax on all cigarette sales. The city then got sued by the tobacco industry, who claimed that pencils and clipboards weren't precise nor provable. And so we were brought in, and our data was used to not only defend, but double that tax, which now generates several $1 million a year for the city of San Francisco to keep itself clean. And what that made me realize was just how powerful a data set can be when given proper context. It also made me realize that, wow, if you could generate that kind of meaningful economic impact just by understanding the percentage of cigarette material, meaning the butt, the pack, or the wrapper that goes around the pack, what about all the coffee cups, soda cans, gum wrappers, potato chip bags, and on and on and on? But that's an example of how policy was changed as a result of the data. On the corporate side, we recently had our Dutch community, they started finding what are called anti-flu plastic wrappers. So anti-flu is like a cough drop, and it's made by a company called Pervasco. Well, the Dutch community picked up, I think at this point, there are over 50,000 anti-flu wrappers, and they took all of that data, which was visualized, to the CEO of the company. And once he saw it, I think he had a realization, which was, wow, my material is ending up all over Holland. So he committed to changing the supply chain from plastic to paper. And that alone could have a massive effect. So those are two examples of how, real systemic change can be generated by, frankly, just the work of a few people.
I love how you've repeated the word community so many times, because I found that in my own personal journey, that's what I was lacking at the beginning. It's one thing to go out by yourself on the side of the road and pick something up, but to be able to share that with a friend and then thus to share it with a community that's cheering you on is a really powerful motivation to continue to do that and to continue to make change for the rest of your community around you.
I would agree. I would say it is necessary. And here's why. This problem is so massive that I think many of us feel overwhelmed, right?
Mhm.
So you walk outside and you see a cigarette butt, and your attitude might be, why in God's name would I ever pick that up? What difference could it possibly make? And what Litterati is starting to do is to really serve as this connective tissue, as this platform that brings people together, people who are taking the same simple action for the greater common good. And it doesn't matter if you live in New York or Nairobi, if you pick up that bottle cap, we're still aggregating it all together. And when you do that at scale, it leads to change. And what happens is that feeling of overwhelm turns into one of empowerment. And that's really what we're aiming to do.
That's amazing. And so how can people get involved in Litterati? Where do they start?
The easiest way is to download our application, which is free on both iOS or Android, and just join the community and start with your first piece. Just pick up one. You don't have to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders to say, I'm going to go clean up, my entire country or my state or even my block. You can just try starting with one piece. That's a really easy way to be part of this. And if that's not what you're interested in, but you just want to share the message, you can find us on all the social media channels. And if our mission resonates with you, then we'd love you to share it.
That's incredible. Is there anything else that you want to share about Litterati before we go?
The only other thing I would say is that we face a time when we all want to make change. In a way, we're starved for it. And I think what's key when you're trying to solve, ocean plastics or this global litter pandemic, you have to find the ways that are simple and can over time actually demonstrate that change is possible. Mm-hmm. And so we're all about starting simple, like keep it easy and reach out to the other community members. When you reach out to the other community members or find that they reach out to you, it can be empowering. It can really make you realize that I'm not in this by myself. This is one environmental problem that I can help solve because I know I'm not the only one trying to solve it.
That's a really great message to leave us with. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Kristin. Thank you so much.